Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Tanya class. Those of you who are watching online, good morning and welcome. Those of you around the table, thank you for coming. We are now holding on chapter 21, which can be found in your Tanya book over here on page 87. So, the last couple of times that we were learning chapter 20. In chapter 20, the Alter Rebbe began to explain the Hasidic understanding of Achdus Hashem, which means the oneness of Hashem. We say every day in the prayers a couple of times, Shema Yisroel, right? Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that Hashem is one. So the simple, when you ask a regular person, layman, what does that mean? It means you shouldn't have any idols. There's only one God. There's not two gods. But the Baal Shem Tov explained, and Chassidus talks about it at great extensive length, that Hashem Echad means not only that there's only one God, that there's no two gods. But it means much more than that, that there's only the existence of God. That's the only existence that there is. There is nothing else but Hashem. So that obviously needs to be understood a little more, because it doesn't seem that way to us. When we look around, we see a lot of other things other than God. Of course, we believe in Hashem, that He created everything, but what does it mean that there's only God? There's no table, there's no coffee, we're drinking coffee, we're sitting around the table, on this table alone there are 20 different things. So what does this mean? So the Alter Rebbe explains it by using the example of speech. Why does he use the example of speech? Because we know that Hashem created the world through speech. He said there should be a light, and there was light. He said there should be a tree, and there was a tree, and so on and so forth, with all the different creations that took place in the 6 days of creation. What does it mean that Hashem spoke the world into existence? So the world is basically Hashem's speech. So he's going to use the concept of speech to explain how Hashem is the only true existence that exists. Nothing else really exists. So what is speech? Let's talk about speech for a minute, and then we'll move on into chapter 20. Well, I'll give a synopsis of chapter 20 first. So he's explained like this. When a person speaks a word, let's go to a human being first. Let's use the example of a human speech. When you utter one word, that one word, compared to your power of speech, has any value? Has no value. Why? Because your power of speech is infinite. It can speak an infinite amount of words. The only reason it doesn't speak an infinite amount of words is because at some point we die. But the power of speech itself is believable, has no limit to it. It can speak as an infinite amount of words. So one word compared to the power of speech is kol chashuv. It has no value. Has no. It's not considered much. It's nothing. Is it quite nothing? Let me cite an example of one drop of water compared to the ocean. Is one drop have any value compared to the ocean?
Very minuscule.
It's minuscule, but it has a value. It is something. You can't say it's not nothing. It's not there. The ocean is made up of millions and billions of drops. So one drop is true. It's infinitesimal. It's nothing, but it's not quite nothing. So therefore, now let's even say that you can imagine that the ocean was infinite, that the ocean never ended. It was an infinite ocean. It's not, but let's say it was. Would one drop be considered nothing? Also not. It also has something. It's also something. You can't say it's not been seen. You can't say it doesn't exist. It's there. There's a drop. Even if the ocean was infinite. Same thing with speech. When you compare one word compared to the power of speech, It's lo choshev. It has no value, because one compared to infinite is taka no. It has indeed no value. But you can't say it doesn't. It's not. You can't say it's not. It has a mitzias. It has an existence. Now let's go a step further. When you compare a one word compared to the koyach hamachshava, to the power of thought. How many thoughts? Your thoughts? Yeah, when you think, you're thinking with letters. You're thinking with words. You're thinking with words. So the one word that you think, compared to the power of thought, the letters of thought, to the power of how much letters you can think, how many words you can think. It's even further. And now you have to understand that the word that you think, one thought, one word that you think, is even less. It's more connected. Thought is much deeper connected to the soul than is speech. Your power of thought is more pnimius. It's more internally connected to your soul. So the one thought word is even less of a significance compared to the power of thought. Correct? To the full power of thought. You'll go a step further. The Alter Rebbe goes one step further into the soul. Where does your thought come from? Where does your word come from? You speak a word, it comes from your thought. Where does your thought come from? What's the origin of your thought? We spoke about this in chapter 20, if you remember. What's the origin of your thought?
Your soul.
Your soul. Why do you think about a certain thing? Because your soul wants it. Right? Because your soul is attracted to it. That attraction in your heart, yeah? That emotional attraction to something. One word, it originates in your attraction, in your soul. So over there already, one word is really valueless. Not only valueless, but you can even argue that it almost doesn't exist. Because in the soul, in the attraction of the soul, in the feelings of the soul, in the thought process of the soul, or the intellect of the soul, better. Yeah? Over there, a spoken word, or a one word, one letter is mamish nothing. It's even less. Correct? How does it work by a human being? By a human being, it starts in the soul, goes to the head, to the thought, then it comes out of your mouth, right? Once it comes out of your mouth, it's a spoken word. It takes on already an existence.
You can't take it back.
Not only you can't take it back, but it's separated from you. It becomes an existence. It becomes a word spoken. It already goes outside of you. By Hashem, when it says that God spoke the world into existence, did those words actually go outside of Him? There's no outside of Hashem. It says in the Zohar, Leis asar ponim minei. There's no place outside of Him where He's not. So when you say speech, we have to understand that why you're calling it speech. It should be really called thought. By a thought, by a person, the thought are words that are still within him. Speech is when it goes outside of him. If you're telling me that by Hashem there's no such a thing as going outside of Him, so why is it called speech? It should be called thought. Hashem thought the world into existence. Not He spoke the world into existence, because there's no such a thing as speech by Him. Because the very definition of speech is when those letters go from the thought out your mouth. But if He doesn't have an outside of Him, so why is it called speech? She's going to answer that in chapter 22. But let's speak first chapter 21. What's he adding over here in chapter 21, which we're going to learn today? The point that he's making in chapter 21 is that when it comes to a human being, a spoken word is actually an existence outside of him. And it takes on true existence. It left him, it's separated from him, and it's out there. By Hashem, there's no such a thing as a word leaving him. So what is it? So what does it mean that these words, which the world is an outgrowth, is a product of his speech, of his word? It's all it's in other words, it's his words and letters as they are still within him. Correct? Because there's no such a thing as outside of him. So these are all words. The created world is Hashem's words as they are still within his existence. What is a word within your existence? Within your soul? We just did that exercise. You took a letter from speech. Its origin is in thought. The origin of the thought is in the heart, which is in the mind. You go all the way back. Are those letters, and do they have independent existence as they are in your soul? Of course not. Over there, the only existence is you. There's no letters that you can identify as letters within your what do you call it? Within your desire and in your intellect. So it turns out that the whole world, which is Hashem's words, which never really left him, they're all within his existence, part of his, what we would call soul, for a lack of a better word. Is there a metzius of letters? Is there a metzius of words? Is there an existence of words other than Hashem himself? No. Let me give you another example that the Alter Rebbe uses somewhere else. The sun. Yeah, you take the sun. We have light down here in our physical world, in our planet, from the sun, yeah? So that's what we call the Ziv HaShemesh, the ray of the soul, of the sun. There's the sun itself, which is 93 million miles away from here, and then there's the ray of the sun that extends all the way to our planet and gives us light, warmth, it gives a power of, whatever, has different things in it which make this world such a good world. Right? There's a rule in life. If something comes from something, that, let's say the ray that comes from the sun, the ray emerges from the sun. So if it comes out of the sun, it must be in the sun as well. If it comes from the sun, it must also first be within the sun. Okay. So this ray is in the sun itself. Right? Is the ray as it's in the sun a ray? What is it? What's its existence within the sun itself? Only sun. It's there, but it totally has no metzius, no existence other than the sun itself. We must say it's there. If it comes out of the sun, it must be first in the sun. But when it's out of the sun, it takes on the existence of a ray. But when it's still in the sun, it doesn't have an existence of a ray. It's all part and parcel one with the sun. Yeah, energy. So if the world is God's speech, that speech, it never leaves Hashem. It's all part within Hashem's existence. And you go all the way, trace it all the way back to the essence of the soul in a human being, right? The feelings and the intellect. Over there, it's not an existence of its own. It doesn't have an independent, separate existence. It's all part of the soul itself. Like the ray is in the sun, it's part of the sun. It's not an independent existence. So is this world independent? Is there anything really other than Hashem? It's all Hashem. It's all part and parcel within Hashem's existence. It doesn't have an existence of its own at all. There's only one existence, Hashem. If the world would have left Hashem, like a spoken word, you could say that this, just like by a human being, the spoken word is out there. It takes on a form of its own. But since there's no such a thing as anything outside of Hashem, because Hashem is everywhere and everything, there's no reality outside of Him. So it's all within Him. So these are words as they are still within Him. And within the soul, there's nothing else but the soul, right? Our letters, as they come out in dibur, in machshava, in speech and thought, as you go back and you trace them back to the soul, it's only soul. Right? If the letters come from the soul, they must first be in the soul. But as they're in the soul, they're not letters. They're not identifiable letters yet. That's how the world is within Hashem. So what is there? There's only Hashem. Okay. There is a world, but it's all Hashem. In other words, you can't say that Bereishis bara Elokim is only an illusion. That God created the world, as it says in Genesis, in the beginning of the Torah, is an illusion. It's not an illusion. God created a world. That's emes. That's absolutely true. But the world doesn't exist as an independent existence. There's no Metzias other than Hashem. It's like your spoken word as it is still within the soul. Imagine that. It's only the soul. In the analog with when we talk about Hashem, the whole world He created it, but it's never left Him, and it's all within Him, and therefore not in existence outside of Him, and even an existence period. There's only one existence, is Hashem. It's like the ray of the sun in the sun. Is there a ray? Yeah, because it comes out of the sun, it must be there. But over there, it's batel b'metzias. It's totally nullified out of existence. It's one with the. It's part of. It's the sun. It's part of the sun. There's only the sun exists within the sun itself. Only Hashem exists within Hashem, and within Hashem means that's the only existence, because there's no reality outside of that. So why do we see ourselves as independent existence? We feel ourselves. We see a world, we see things. It's because, as I'll explain in chapter 22, how that happens. And even in the end of chapter 21. It's called Tzimtzum, whatever, we'll get there. But the real reality is that there's no Metzias outside of Him. The reason he's bringing all this, he's trying to get at, where he's trying to go with this is that any time a person or an existence or an entity starts feeling and recognizing himself as something, as independent, it amounts to idol worship. It's just like it equals idol worship. Because the truth is that only Hashem exists. If you feel yourself as an independent existence outside of Hashem, or independent of if this ray starts feeling itself as a ray, as it's still within the ball of the sun, it's a falsehood. When we start feeling ourselves as independent, I'm also important. I'm important. That's idol worship. Because you're creating a reality that is outside of Hashem. The only true existence is Hashem Echad. When you say, I'm also in existence and I'm also important, what you created basically is an idol. Hashem is not the only existence. I also exist. I'm also important. Where does this express itself? In sin. When a person decides to sin, Hashem said not to eat non-kosher, and I say, yeah, I'm also important. He has his opinion, I have mine. And I'm going to eat now what I want. So that's an independent existence. You turned yourself into an idol. The Alter Rebbe said in chapter 18 and 19 that a Yid is incapable of worshipping idols. He'll even die if not to worship an idol. He'll give up his life not to deny his faith. Even a non-idealistic Jew. The Alter Rebbe said, you remember we discussed this at length. The story with Moshe Ledeganiv. You know the story with Moshe Ledeganiv in Krakow? I think. He was a Ganiv. That was his life. Not an idealistic Jew. But he wouldn't convert to Christianity, and they burnt him at the stake. They burnt him alive. A father of 10 children. They burnt him alive in front of the whole town. Where did that come from? You say he's an idealistic Jew. He's not an idealist. His whole life he stole. He wasn't doing anything what Hashem wanted. The point is that when it comes to a test of faith, idol worship, to deny your connection to Hashem, that a Yid is incapable of doing. The Alter Rebbe is getting at is saying that's true. It should be true with every sin. Because every sin and every time you do something against Hashem, that's idol worship. It's the same as idol worship. And if you're ready to give up your life for idol worship, you should be ready to do the same for any other sin. Thank God we don't have to do that. But at least live. So, with Alter Rebbe, where did this all start? Alter Rebbe was saying that every year has an Avim Suteres, a hidden love for Hashem. Right? And because of that hidden love, we're ready to give up our life for Hashem. Alter Rebbe went in from chapter 20 and on till 25. He's going to explain that should be true with every single act, every thought, every spoken word. Everything that is not godly is idol worship. The minute you make yourself an importance outside of Hashem, to the exclusion of Hashem, it's idol worship. So the hidden love should be enough to arouse it on any level, on any sin, with anything that is not godly. It's a tall order, there's no question about it. You have to be very conscious of this. But the Alter Rebbe explains it very well. Let's see it in the Alter Rebbe's word, chapter 21. However, the nature of the divine order is not like that of a creature of flesh and blood. Till now we gave the example of speech, right? Because the Torah uses speech as the source of the world. Hashem spoke. So he gave an example of the speech as it is by a person. So he said by Hashem is not the same as by a person. When a man utters a word, the breath emitted in speaking is something that can be sensed and perceived as a thing apart, separated from its source, namely the 10 faculties of the soul itself. It's separate from the soul. Its origin is in the soul, but as it comes out of your mouth, it becomes a separate entity. It becomes an independent existence. But with the Holy One, blessed be He, His speech is not heaven for friends separated from His blessed self, for there is nothing outside of Him, and there is no place devoid of Him. Therefore, His blessed speech is not like our speech, God forbid. Just as His thought is not like our thought, as it is written, for my thoughts are not like your thoughts. This is a pasuk in Isaiah. And so my ways are higher than your ways. Okay. His blessed speech is called speech. Oh, so why do you call it speech? If it never leaves, and that's the definition of speech, that it goes out of your mouth. So why is it called speech? He says it's called speech only by way of an anthropomorphic illustration, in the sense that as in the case of man below, whose speech reveals to his audience what was hidden and concealed in his thoughts, so too is it on high with the blessed Ein Sof, whose emitted light and life force, as it emerges from him, from concealment into revelation, to create words and to sustain them, is called speech. What is the Alter Rebbe saying over here? There's 2 definitions to speech. One definition of speech is, what I would say is the more important definition is, that you have, through speech, we have the ability to reveal what's hidden in our thoughts to someone else. When do you need speech? When there's another person in the vicinity, and you want to share with him what you're thinking or what you're feeling and everything that's going on within you. So the mouth has the power of speech is there to be able to reveal to someone outside of you, to reveal your insides, to reveal what's going on, what's concealed within you, to reveal it. That's the first definition of speech. Probably the more important definition. The second definition of speech is that the spoken word takes on existence of its own. It leaves the person who speaks. Correct? By Hashem, we already determined that the second definition doesn't apply. It never leaves Him. There is no such a thing as leaving Hashem. So then the question is, why are you calling it speech? Call it thought, call it soul, call it something else. It's not speech if it never leaves Him. Oh. So he says the reason we call it speech, Vayomer, the reason it says in the Torah, God said let there be light, God said let there be things, right? Is because He does have the first definition of speech. He revealed. Speech is a revelation of yourself. You're revealing what's concealed within. That does apply to Hashem. In the creation of the world, Hashem revealed that which was concealed. Yeah?
As you just mentioned, speech is dependent upon a listener. Otherwise, it's not speech.
No, it isn't. That's what I'm saying. That's the second definition. The first definition is revelation. Revealing. Speech means what's concealed is now revealed.
To
yourself, to whoever. It's revealed.
It's revealed to yourself before you speak. Right?
True. Well, not really, but not necessarily.
If I say dog, if I think of a dog and say the word dog, the word dog was in my mind before I spoke it. Obviously.
Yeah, but speech is a little more than that. But
right,
yeah.
The speech implies the reason you employ an external tool like your mouth is so that speech leaves you and is received hopefully by someone else. If it doesn't do that, if you don't do that, then you're still in thought, actually, not really speech.
Yeah.
So, in the first 6 days of creation, let's say, if Hashem is speaking, it's to who are he speaking? And especially
were the worlds created?
Huh?
In the first 6 days of creation, were the worlds created?
What worlds?
Our world. Atzilas, Bri, Yetzira, Asiya, this physical world, all the worlds.
Well, it depends.
But it doesn't depend.
The first thing
that
was created was not the world. First thing that was created was energy.
Wow. Okay, the second thing, energy is also part of the world. What is energy? Not part of the world.
It is.
It's okay, whatever. When I say world, I mean anything that was created, that became an existence.
Yeah. But if you speak, when you use the word speak, it does. My problem here is it's not answering the question. The question is, what do we mean that God spoke the world into existence? If you're saying He spoke, it has to be spoken to someone.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, to the worlds. The worlds were created.
There was no world when he created.
No. The point is, He revealed.
To?
The worlds became revealed. There was a revelation that took place in creation. It was first concealed, or non-existence, and now it came out into revelation, into existence. The worlds were concealed before within Him, and now they took on existence. They're here. There's a world. Something was revealed. His energy, His light, His creative power, whatever you want to call it, something was revealed in the 6 days of creation. So now you're asking a good question. What if there's nothing that it goes out of Him? To who was it revealed? The point is, are there worlds or are there no worlds? Did something happen in the 6 days of creation or not?
Yes.
Sure, something happened. Worlds were created. We're saying that even though Bereshis bara Elokim, that Hashem created the world, it doesn't contradict the idea of Hashem Echad, that there really only exists is Hashem. Why?
That I agree.
Well, you agree. I know you agree, but the explanation of this is...
Yeah, I agree with the explanation.
So therefore he's saying that the reason it's called speech, and not anything else, let's say thought, is because in thought nothing is revealed. It's still within. In speech, something that was concealed was now revealed. In the creation of the world, that happened. Something came into revelation. Hashem's creative power, the worlds, whatever it is, something came into revelation. We're saying only that you should not make a mistake thinking that it's outside and independent of Hashem. In the reality of Hashem, it's all one with Hashem. Fine. But he's calling it speech because there was some revelation that happened. And that's the definition of speech. That's the more important definition of speech, is revelation. That's what speech is, it's revelation. Let's see now the Rebbe's words again. After the parentheses, the fourth line on top. His blessed speech is called speech only by way of an anthropomorphic illustration, in the sense that, as in the case of man below, whose speech reveals to his audience what was hidden and concealed in his thoughts, so too is it on high with the blessed Ein Sof, whose emitted light and life force, as it emerges from him from concealment into revelation to create worlds and to sustain them, is called speech. These emanations are indeed the 10 fiats by which the world was created, the 10 utterances, asorim amoras, the 10 utterances with which God created the world, and likewise also the remainder of the Torah, prophets and the scriptures, the hagiographer, whatever, however you pronounce that, which the prophets conceived in their prophetic vision. It's all Hashem speak. Hashem spoke to a prophet. What does that mean? He revealed to the prophet. Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem revealed to Moshe Rabbeinu his thoughts, what he wanted to reveal to him. Okay.
No problem with that.
Okay, fine.
We have a recipient.
Morning.
Good morning.
And we don't have a recipient in the creation.
We don't actually.
When you say
Who is receiving
Why don't you have the creation itself, the world? You're saying that in order for speech to exist, there has to be a recipient before you spoke.
Right.
And if it's after and it's while you're speaking, that's creating, that's revealing your creative power and creating the recipient. It's also revelation. It's also revelation. The point is, could you speak when and there's no one around?
Sure.
Are you revealing anything?
no?
No.
Sure you are. Yes, it came out. You revealed it.
To whom?
What's the difference?
No, there's a big difference.
Okay, it's not. I think that's semantics.
It is semantic.
Yeah.
My problem here, it's not with any of this stuff. There's no problem with that. I don't think we've answered the question of why the language used is that he speaks the world into existence, whereas, in my opinion, a more proper description would be he willed the world into existence, which is a completely different thing.
And he's going to explain that later, why it's not
I
called
think
will.
that makes a lot
He's
more.
not going to say why it's not called will. He's going to get more into the details of why it's called speech.
Okay.
He certainly willed it.
Yes.
He certainly willed it. He wanted it. But just because you want something doesn't mean it happens. So willing it doesn't mean it's going to happen yet.
No, wanting and willing to do.
I want to go to Miami, okay?
No,
so I have to,
I wanna go
just
to
because I
Miami.
want doesn't mean I'm in Miami.
No.
Okay,
But
so
Hashem-
willing it,
but-
you're right. You can argue that by Hashem, the minute He wills it, it happens.
Exactly.
Okay, so different. But how does it happen? Through revelation. That's called speech. Revelation is called speech. That's what he's saying. And the world was revealed. Something of Him was revealed, and by that created the world. His creative power was revealed, and that became the world. So that, in that sense, it's called speech. Because speech reveals. Nothing else reveals. Within the human experience, speech is what reveals.
Reveals can be used as the same as manifestation. I mean,
No, manifestation is not necessarily revealed manifestation, or is it? I don't know. Maybe.
in the
Let's not get caught up
world
with...
creation, it is
yeah.
a manifestation. I mean, in the physical world, it appears in the physical world.
True. But what we're saying is that the reason that the world is called God's speech, the creation is called speech, even though the words and nothing ever exited and went outside of the speaker, in this case Hashem. So in what sense is it speech? It shouldn't be called speech. It should be called thought, maybe, because that's words, it's still in him. He says it's called speech because the concept of speech means revelation. And over here there was a revelation that took place. In creation there was a revelation. That's the point of it. Yet, let's see further, yet his so-called speech and thought are united with him in absolute union, as for example a person's speech and thought, whilst they are still in potential, is wisdom and intellect. Like we said in chapter 20. Or in the desire and craving that are still in the heart prior to rising from the heart to the brain, whereby cogitation, when they thinks about it, they are formulated into so-called letters. Before you think about it, it's just a raw desire, right? Over there are no letters. Or maybe there are letters, but the letters over there are totally bottled to they're one with the soul. That's how creation is. It's one with Hashem. For at that time, the letters of thought and speech which revolve from that longing and desire were still in potential in the heart, where they were absolutely fused with their root, namely the wisdom and intellect in the brain, and the longing and desire of the heart in the heart. The letters of desire When you desire something, are there letters there? Let's illustrate it like this. Do you desire something in English?
No.
Do you think in English?
Yes.
Oh. So real letters begin to formulate in your thinking, when you start thinking. When you have a desire in your heart, you're not desiring it in French. There's no language barrier. You do it in Spanish, I do it in English. That doesn't happen there yet, right? Or even in the intellect. When you understand something, do you understand something in English? No. The intellect understands. It says versteht. It understands. It's not over there. Letters are not so formulated yet. But could you say that there are no letters there at all? The letters come from there.
Yeah.
The letters emerge from there. So over there, the letters are not yet independent letters, but they come from the desire and from the intellect. But when they're there, they're all one with the intellect. They're one with the desire. They're one with the soul, in other words. The soul is made up of intellect and emotions. So it's one with the soul. When Hashem speaks, that's how it is. The letters, meaning the world, the physical world, which are His letters, are one with Him. Are still within His soul, within Hashem's reality. So it's an independent existence. Is it Bechlal an existence outside of Him? No. It's all one with Hashem. It's all Hashem. Achdas Hashem. There's only one thing. There's only Hashem. You have to picture it like the letters as they are in your soul. The soul's letters are letters.
No.
You can say there's two things. There's the soul and there's the letters of the soul. The words of the soul. There's no words. Over there it's only soul. You can say there's a sun and its ray in the sun itself. It's there, but it's not as a ray. If it comes out, if it emerges from the sun, it must be in the sun. But over there, it's not the ray. It's not a ray. It's the sun. So the world's the same thing. Hashem's words and the world that came from His words. Right? Since Hashem, the sun is everywhere. There's nothing outside of Him. So its letters as they are still within His soul. Within Hashem Himself, which is Hashem Himself. Only Hashem. Why do we see ourselves as people and animals and stones and trees and all that? That's because there's a tzimtzum. Hashem is concealing His reality, which we'll talk about in chapter 22. But the point is, what's the reality? The reality is there's only Hashem. There's nothing outside of Hashem. That's why it says, Ani Hashem Lishon Nisi. I, God, have not changed. You remember in chapter 20, he brought that verse. We'll say, so you didn't change. Before there was no creation, now there is a creation. How can you say you didn't change? There's a change. A change happened. Because this creation didn't change anything. It's Batal B'Metzias. There's only Hashem. Verily so, by way of example, are the speech and thought of the Holy One, blessed be He, absolutely united with His blessed essence and being, even after His blessed speech has already become materialized in the creation of the worlds, just as it was united with Him before the world was created, ere the world was created. There is thus no manner of change in His blessed self, but only for the created beings which receive their life force from His blessed words. The change is from our perspective. Would you read that again? There is thus no manner of change in His blessed self, but only for the created beings which receive their life force from His blessed word. That's us. Creation, for us, there was a change from before creation and after creation. Their life, as it were, in its revealed state at the creation of the worlds in which it is clothed, giving them life through a process of gradual descent from cause to effect and a downward gradation by means of numerous and various contractions, tzimtzumim, until the created beings can receive their life and existence from it without losing their entity. We're going to go over this next week again, but because this needs a lot of understanding. But just briefly, he says from Hashem's reality, no change took place through creation, because there really was no change. Creation is all, there is no creation. From Hashem's reality, it's only Him. Good. From creation's standpoint, from the created reality standpoint, there is a change. What's the change? Now we're here. Before we weren't, but are we here? We just said we're not here. It's all the ray as it's still in the sun. But is the ray in the sun? Yeah. The ray is in the sun. If it's outside the sun, it must be there first. But over there, it's batel b'metzius. Over there, it's submerged in the oneness of the sun. There is nothing else besides the sun within the ball of the sun. The ray is part of the sun. It's all one with the sun. Okay. Creation is the same thing. It's all within Hashem still. So why is it that we are now feeling ourselves to be not part of Hashem's reality? In our conscious mind, we feel our hands, our feet, our books, our tables. There's a reality. There's a reality, a physical world. And a spiritual world. There's angels, there's all kinds of realities, right? Alter Rebbe explained that this is all as a result of the tzimtzum that took place. Tzimtzum means the Eibishter contracted his light, his creative force. He contracted his own essence or his infinite light. I'm not going to get in over here the lengthy explanation what this tzimtzum, how it happens, and what does that mean. Hashem withheld his infinite light and allowed for his finite reality to emerge. It's a whole lesson in itself, which we'll do, of course. But suffice it to say that the tzimtzum reality happened. He contracted himself, withheld himself. Let me give you an example for tzimtzum. It's explained in the Maimorim of the Rebbe Rashab in great length. The discourses of the fifth Rebbe, he explains this. It's explained everywhere. The Alter Rebbe's Maimorim, but he explained it very, very methodical, detailed, and so on. To cite an example, and I'll try to do this very briefly. A teacher and student. Let's talk about a teacher and student. A teacher who's completely beyond the realm of the student. Let's take a person like from our world. Yeah, who can you think as the ultimate wise teacher? Let's say Einstein. Okay,
I was thinking the same person.
Let's say Einstein. Einstein goes into a classroom in a college. He's talking to 20-year-olds. Is there a comparison between Einstein and them? No, almost not. There's no comparison. How does Einstein teach his incredibly lofty concepts to 20-year-olds? To 5-year-olds he can, but to 20-year-olds he perhaps can.
He has to downgrade his way.
What does he have to do? He has to be mitzvah. He has to contract his wisdom. He has to withhold the infinite. He does not infinite, but let's say his powerful wisdom, contract it completely, start using parables and clothe that wisdom in parables and all kinds of examples, and after who knows how many levels, perhaps the 25-year-old, the 20-year-old can get a glimpse of what he's talking about. Chochma Shloimeh. Shloimeh HaMelech, the Torah says, he used 3,000 parables to explain one of his concepts. He needed 3,000 parables. That means he gave one parable, but no one understood that parable either. It was too lofty. So he had to give a parable for that one. He had 3,000 levels, and then we finally understand what he's talking about. We can't even grasp what that means. But that's called Ein Areich. It's a completely different kind of wisdom. So a teacher and a student. The teacher starts giving parables for his wisdom to try to enclose it in new clothing until it comes down to the level where its pupil can understand it. The real wisdom of the teacher is withheld. The depth of his teachings is withheld. That's never going to come down to the student. A glimmer of it comes down to the student, right? When the student hears the parable, does he see the depth of the teacher's? So the parable is a covering. It covers the depth of the wisdom. For who does it cover the depth of the wisdom? For the teacher or for the student? Does the parable contract and conceal the wisdom from the teacher? Of course not. No, not from the teacher. In the parable, the teacher, the parable is covering anything from the teacher's point of view. No. In the parable, the teacher has it doesn't. It only covers for the student. So the same thing with Hashem. He contracted his infinite light to give room for creations to come into existence, so to say. Now, this contraction is many, many, many levels. One contraction, another infinite. I think he says infinite amount of contractions. Many, many contractions and different types of contractions. From Hashem's level, from Hashem's point of view, is there contraction real? The parable covers anything? No. In the parable, he sees everything. The contraction doesn't cover anything. So from Hashem's point of view, the contraction doesn't do anything. It's all the same reality as before. Which is, Bittul b'Metzius. It's only Achdus, there's only one existence. But what Hashem does is he creates this covering, so to say, so that we creation should be able to come into existence. From our point of view, the Tzimtzum did affect something. The Tzimtzum, meaning these contractions or this lowering or diffusion, or what did you call it for? Dilution. Downgrading and dilution of the infinite light of Hashem did take on, did cause a change, and it was so diluted to the point where in lower level realities are now in existence and so on until the physical world. But that's only from the way we see it. From Hashem's reality, from the way from his standpoint. All these contractions are only there, doesn't contract anything from his point of view. So from Hashem's reality, from his view, there's only one existence. It's all the letters as they are in his soul, and there's nothing else. Period. That's the ray as it's in the sun. But imagine the ray in the sun, and the sun has the ability to withhold the sun. Imagine, let's go to the sun. You had the example of the sun and the ray. So we're saying the ray is in the sun. And when it's in the sun, there's only sun, there's no ray. Right? Okay. We understand that, right? But imagine this sun had the ability to withhold its sunlight, its sun existence from the ray within the sun. So the ray would start seeing himself as an existence, right? But from the sun's point of view, it's not really happening. It's happening, but not from his standpoint. That's the way it is with Hashem in creation. He contracted himself, but for us, so that we should see it as contraction. Not for him, it's not a contraction. And therefore, in reality, what's the reality? There's only one thing. There's only one Metzius in this reality. It's Hashem himself. It's all Hashem. Did Hashem create? Absolutely. It's not an illusion. And the change is only from our point of view. Let's see it now. The Rebbe's words. We'll finish the chapter and we'll read it, and then we'll go back to the second half of this chapter next week. Explain it even better. Let's start it from the fourth line of the left column on page 89, where that circle is. Verily so. You with me? By way of example are the speech and thought of the Holy One, blessed be He, absolutely united with His blessed essence and being, even after His blessed speech had already become materialized in the creation of the worlds, just as it was united with Him before the world was created, the worlds were created. There, There is thus no manner of change in his blessed self, but only for the created beings which receive their life force from his blessed word, as a word, in its revealed state at the creation of the worlds, in which it is clothed. Let's read that again, second. There is thus, I'm going to start from there again. There is thus no manner of change in his blessed self, but only for the created beings which receive their life force from his blessed word, as a word in its revealed state, when the word became revealed. In other words, why are we calling it speech? Because he revealed, that's revelation. That's when they become existent, and that's the changes for them. In its revealed state at the creation of the worlds, in which it is clothed. That word is clothed in creation, giving them life through a process of gradual descent from cause to effect and a downward gradation, right? Like the teacher has to lower his, by means of numerous and various contractions. Until the created beings can receive the life force and existence from it without losing their entity. Had the creations come into existence before Tzimtzum, without a Tzimtzum, without contraction, they would never be able to. Imagine Einstein walked into a 5-year-old classroom and started teaching. There would be nothing. Nothing would come into, nothing would register. If God created the world without a Tzimtzum, the worlds wouldn't come into existence. They would not take on physical form. He had to contract himself so that they don't lose their existence, even from their own perspective. You follow? Or not? Huh?
Dibre Teure Kelush Men Eudam.
Dibre Teure Kelush Men Eudam. Da hebt dan da in Perich Chav Beis, da guckt dan. Rak Teure Dibre Kelush Men Eudam. Yeah.
So maybe when he says Vayoyme Vayor, it doesn't mean say. Maybe just to understand. Maybe it means talk. He talked, or maybe it means he didn't speak.
No, it's Megala. That's what it means. Yeah. He was revealed. He revealed. That's what it means.
Speech,
of course, he's not speaking with vocal cords.
Yeah, he was asking speech. You need to have somebody to listen. You need to have somebody to listen. Yes. But this wasn't speech.
It was revelation.
Yeah, so that's you should understand. That's why the Torah says speech. Maybe.
Right. Yeah. He uses the figurative of speech to make it closer so we can appreciate what's going on. But it means really revelation. That's what speech is, revelation. Speech has two things, as I said, revelation and separation. By Hashem is revelation without separation. And therefore, since there's no separation, it's all Him.
There's a word that he used before that went over my head. It's
which one?
Anthropomorphism.
Illustration. Yeah.
And I think that's what we're talking about, where it's a downgraded illustration for us to understand.
It's in a parable, so to say, yeah.
And he says, not even with words, just with the hearts, with the asay, right?
Yeah.
With the asay, so what does that mean?
These contractions are all in the nature of veiling of the countenance. What does contraction mean? That he covers, he clothes himself in the covering.
Rabbi,
to obscure and conceal the light and life force that are derived from his blessed word, so that it shall not reveal itself in a greater radiance than the lower worlds are capable of receiving. In that sense, it's contracted himself, so that we should not be able to, we should be, first of all, be able to come into existence, because if he revealed too much of himself, we would never come into existence. Hence, it seems to them as if the light and life force of the world, of the word of the Omnipotent Hashem, blessed be He, which is clothed in them, were something apart from His blessed self. It looks that way. And it only issues from Him, just as the speech of a human being issued from his soul. Yet, in regard to the Holy One, blessed be He, no concealment or delitescency hides. Nothing can hide or conceal or obscure anything from Him. To whom darkness is like light, as is written, Ye, the darkness obscures not from thee. The darkness doesn't obscure anything from you, it only obscures from us. For all the contractions and garments are not things distinct from Him. They're all part of Him. The contraction is also part of his doing and part of him. And he gives an example of it. For all the contractions and garments are not things distinct from him, even for fen, but like the snail whose garment is part of his body. Like a snail, I think it means what do you call that? The turtle.
No, but a snail too.
A snail also? Okay.
Yeah, it's
The
no
snail's shell is part of his body.
Right,
Yeah.
the shell is part of his body. The same thing over here, the shell, the tzimtzum is part of Hashem. But it only conceals for us, not for him. The teacher, when he gives a parable, the parable is not concealing anything from him, it's only concealing from you, the student. And as is written, the Lord is God, as is explained elsewhere in Hebrew, the Lord, He is God, is Hashem Hu Elikim. What does this mean? Hashem Hu Elikim. Hashem is God. What does that mean? Of course Hashem is God. Who then is it? But the point over here, according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, Hashem represents one level of reality within Hashem. Elikim represents another reality. Elikim is associated with Tzimtzum. Elikim is associated with Tzimtzum, with this contraction. Elikim is a form of God as he's already contracted. Okay? So he said, but the reality is Hashem, Hu Elikim. Elikim and Hashem is all one. From Hashem's reality, Hashem, Hu Elikim. Hashem, the level which is beyond Tzimtzum is the same as Elikim, the level below Tzimtzum. Because it's all from Him, it's all His reality. From Him there's no Tzimtzum. Elikim and Hashem is the same thing. The parable it doesn't conceal anything. So the parable is, in the parable is Hashem. Right? In the Tzimtzum is Hashem. As is explained elsewhere. Therefore, in His presence, all else is of no account whatever. There is nothing else but Hashem. The only reason we see ourselves as independent, apart, is because of the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum from Hashem's reality is part of Him. It's His, and in reality, it's all the ray as it's still in the sun, the letters as it's still in the soul. Is there anything but Hashem? No. But is it an illusion? No, it's not an illusion either. It's the reality of the creation is real. But from our reality, it looks separate. From Hashem's reality, it's not separate, it's all Him.
Well, because it's also contained the
In
concept
chapter-
of time, right?
But
If it's also contained the concept of time, I mean, for Hashem probably is no time.
there is no time, it's beyond time and space,
Exactly.
of course. Created time and space. In chapter 22, he's going to give an additional aspect over here. He says, actually, the Torah calls it speech, because in it there is also the second definition of speech. There is an element of separation. What we say, speech has two things, revelation and separation. Right? And we said in chapter 21 that from Hashem's the reason it's called speech is because of the revelation aspect, not the separation aspect. Right? Because nothing is separate from Hashem. It's all within Him. He's going to say in 22 that even the second aspect of speech, separation, applies here as well. He created a reality that's called Klippa and Sitra Achra, which is unholiness and all the unholy reality. That is taka separated from Hashem. What is separation? You have to understand what that means. It's not really. To understand what that means. When a person eats a piece of chazer, a piece of pork, a yid, eats pork, or does some other lies or cheats or steals, any sin in the Torah, is he separated from Hashem at that point?
No.
Is there a separation going on? You can't say that. There's a separation.
Yeah, it's a separation.
He's separated. Yeah, there's a separation, but yeah, you're right. I know what you're saying, because really there could be nothing separated from Hashem. Mm-hmm. But it's not so simple. There is a separation, and he's going to explain this. That's what Avodah Zarah is. That's what Elikim Achedim. What is Elikim Achedim? Other gods. Huh? Yeah.
It's man's choice to choose this.
And when you choose to do against Hashem, you're separated from Him. Oh, so there is separation. So there is ability. So this speech, this creative process, this creation that happened in 6 days, There's an element of it that Hashem even made. It's called speech because there's something even of the second definition of speech, which is separation. Let's not run ahead of ourselves.
For us to understand the Tanya, it's like Einstein with 5 years. Or even much more.
Precisely right.
Just
to understand the Tanya.
This is why? Because this is Chochmas Hashem. This is Hashem's wisdom, which is taka infinite. Einstein's wisdom is not infinite.
No.
You can't even compare.
Not at all.
But the Eibishter did fit his Torah into, we learned in chapter 4, he squeezed his Torah into our minds, so that a little bit of some of it could be explained and understood even by our finite minds. He did. That's what he did. To do us a favor. To his kindness, he fit his infinite wisdom into our heads. Imagine that.
Covers and layers also.
State.
Yeah.
Rabbi, this sentence, these constructions are all in the nature of veiling of the countenance.
Right. He veiled. You know what veil means? He covered. He
Is it
concealed.
related with the klipots, or
It's called, what does klipa mean? Klipa means a shell. What does a klipa mean? The
cover,
peel.
right?
The peel of an orange is called
Skin,
the klipa.
yeah.
Skin,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what klipa is. So there's real klipa. There's klipa that really concealed the Eibishter, which is sin. And then this klipa is neiga, which is a translucent klipa. We spoke about this in chapter 1. That there's something called, in chapter 7, a klipa that's only looks like a klipa, but you could uncover what's behind it. Like this table. Is this table holy or not?
all depends?
It depends what you do with
What do you
it.
think?
You use it for Tanya to learn Torah on it, it's holy. You take away the klipa. When you look at this table, do you see the Dvar Hashem? You see the creative force of Hashem in this table? It's there, but you don't see it. So the wood, it's shelling over it, it's covering it. But it's that type of klipa of neiga, which you can uncover the truth, which is, this is godly. When you learn Torah on it, you uncover the truth of this table. It's a part of Hashem. There are certain things that are not able to be revealed. The essence of it can be revealed. For example, things that are sinful. Could you take a piece of pork? Or let's forget about a table. Let's take this coffee. We just drank coffee. Why did you drink the coffee? He was tired when he came here today, he told me. He wasn't going to stay. He was very tired. He went to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I said, drink a coffee. It'll give you a little energy. You'll be able to stay for the class. The coffee itself bespeaks God. You see God in the coffee? No. It covers, it's a klipa over the Ruach Hashem, the Dvar Hashem that's in this. There's a word of Hashem that's making this coffee exist every moment. But you don't see it. It's covered with a veil. But you can uncover that veil when you use this for a godly purpose. You use it to get strength to learn Torah. Imagine he would have taken, I need to get strength to learn Tanya this morning. What's he going to do? He'll go to McDonald's and eat a sandwich. And I'll be strong. No, that can't work. That doesn't work.
Because it's
You
for his
can't
own-
uncover that spark. That spark, the only way you uncover that spark of godliness in the pork is when you stay away from it.
Okay.
You can't incorporate that into holiness. You can't. It's sholish klipas at meis. Those are the 3 unclean klipas. We spoke about that at great length. So it's a veil. There's stronger veils and there's lesser veils. And that's what is in chapter 22. He's going to say that veils that are stronger are taka separation. There's an element of separation. When a person does something sinful, he's separated from God. And in that sense, the speech left Hashem's reality. Left. There's no left, but it's... Comprende?
That's a kid of 5 years. Yeah.
Listen.
Exactly.
That's what Chabad. Chabad means that the Alter Rebbe took the deepest inyonim of Elikus and he enclosed it in Chochmeh Bina Das. Inside human mind that's not even so sophisticated, but to understand what he's talking about. On an intellectual level.
That's true.
I thank you everyone for
Thank you.
staying and
Thank you.
learning with us.
Yeah.
We'll see you next Sunday, God willing. Same time, same place.